Welcome everybody. Good to have everybody together. Okay, a little summary of this week's Parsha. Continuing with this Joseph story we started last week. Joseph's imprisonment finally ends up when Pharaoh dreams of 7 fat cows that are swallowed up by 7 lean cows, and then of 7 fat ears of grain swallowed up by 7 lean ears. Joseph interprets the dreams to mean that 7 years of plenty will be followed by 7 years of hunger, and advises Pharaoh to store grain during the plentiful years. Pharaoh is pleased with Joseph's advice and appoints him governor of Egypt. Joseph marries Asnat, daughter of Potiphar, and they have 2 sons, Menashe and Ephraim. In time, as the famine spreads throughout the region, food can be obtained only in Egypt. 10 of Joseph's brothers come to Egypt to purchase grain. The youngest, Benjamin, stays home, for Jacob fears for his safety. Joseph recognizes his brothers, but they do not recognize him. He accuses them of being spies, insists that they bring Benjamin to prove that they are who they say they are, and imprisons Shimon as a hostage. Later, they discover that the money they paid for their provisions has been mysteriously returned to them. Jacob agrees to send Benjamin only after Judah assumes personal responsibility for him. This time Joseph receives them kindly, releases Shimon, and invites them to dinner at his home. But then he plants his special silver goblet in Benjamin's sack. When the brothers set out for home the next morning, they are pursued, searched, and arrested when the goblet is discovered. Joseph offers to set them free and retain only Benjamin as his slave. He is messing with them. Okay, this is the verse we're going to look at, which is the opening verse of the Parsha, Vayihi Mikeitz Shenatayim Yamim. And it was at the end of 2 years to the day, Ufaro Cholem, and Pharaoh dreamed, Vehine Omed al Hayaor. And behold, he was standing by the Nile. Reb Yitzchak of Vorki had a friend who would often verbally bash his master, Rabbi Simcha Bunim. He would do this right in front of Reb Yitzchak, but Reb Yitzchak never said anything about it or got upset in the slightest. Reb Yitzchak's Hasidim were astonished by this. They asked him how he could possibly allow his friend to speak so harshly about his Rebbe and never say a word of defense or reprimand. "I'll tell you about something that happened to me," Reb Yitzchak replied. "I was once traveling in a certain city when a stranger approached me, looked at me for a moment, and exclaimed, 'That's him!' Then a second man did the same thing, and then a third, though I had no idea what they were talking about. Before long, a crowd of upset and noisy people were showering me with curses and abuses, the gist of which was, 'You are the man who deserted this woman and left her as an aguna.'" So if you don't know, in traditional Jewish law, an aguna is a woman whose husband runs away without granting a legal divorce, thus leaving her unable to remarry. They were so convinced they knew who I was that no amount of explanation on my part could persuade them that I was not the man they were looking for. In the end, I had to go along with them to the rabbinical court and grant the woman a bill of divorce. Which is a good thing, I guess, anyway. Now, all that time they were busy abusing me. I wasn't the slightest bit angry at them because I knew they weren't directing their complaints and curses at me. They thought I was her husband. In truth, they couldn't see me at all. They only saw their own story. So too with my friend who talks bad of my Rebbe. I don't get excited. I know he talks this way only because he doesn't really know my Rebbe. In truth, he talks about a character that lives only in his mind. So this is something that can happen to all of us and does to some degree all the time. Our view or our experience of the present can be unconsciously distorted by our past conditioning. Some negative experience we have ferments in our memory, sprouting into an inevitably oversimplified story, and that becomes the screen through which we tend to see things. And sometimes life itself sinks into a negative frame, and we can feel that God or reality itself is conspiring against us. That's that victim story. So what is the way out of it? Vayihi Mikeitz, and it was the end. These are the opening words of our opening verse. To get free from this negativity, the story that we're telling ourselves in our minds, often without knowing it, has to come to an end. The whole narrative has to collapse. Shnatayim yamim. This is normally translated 2 years to the day, right? But it's strange. It's a strange construction. The first word shnatayim is a contraction of 2 words, shana, which means year, but also change, hinting at the concept of time. And the word shtayim means 2. Shnatayim then could be translated as duality of time. Together with yamim, which is days, we can retranslate the duality of time, the multiplicity of days. So time is dependent on duality, which means, what is duality? It's an internal thing. It's a way of thinking. It's the ability of the mind to compare one thing to another. In the case of time, the mind compares one moment to another. Through the memory and imagination of past and future events, a sense of time is created. Once the mind creates a sense of time, we experience life as a multiplicity of days, meaning we experience life as a receding tunnel of yesterdays and an impending journey of tomorrows. But this time-based version of life is actually a dream. Just like Pharaoh's dreams, this version of life is a tapestry of healthy, peaceful moments, alternating with ugly, monstrous moments. And sometimes the monstrous seem to overtake and swallow up everything that is good. The cows of ugly appearance and gaunt flesh ate up the 7 cows of beautiful appearance. But dreams do come to an end. Vayikatz Paro, Pharaoh awoke. Vehine chalom, and behold, it was only a dream. The word for awoke, yikatz, shares the root of Mikeitz, which means end, right? It's the same root, hinting that awakening is the end of something. The end of what? Vayehi Mikeitz shenatayim yamim. Awakening from the duality of time is the end of the multiplicity of days. That is the end of seeing this moment simply as a passing between the remembered past and partially imagined also and imagined future. So to come to the end of time, to awaken, is actually profoundly simple. It can happen at any moment, and yet it can only happen in this moment. It happens when we let go of our grip on narrative and allow this moment to speak for itself. Is there any greater beauty than the richness of this moment? Is there any greater gift than our awareness of this miracle? And in the consciousness of this miracle, is there any room for negative judgmental thoughts about others? When you see how your own mind works and get free from its illusions, it also becomes easy to see how others are trapped by their illusions. Then you don't get pulled into their drama, no matter how they treat you, like this story. You don't take it personally because you can see that they are trapped. They are hurling their negativity towards some idea of you, not the real you. And even deeper, the real you, as well as the real identity of others, is nothing less than the divine, the one reality that expresses itself in infinite forms. This deep seeing, looking beyond our stories into the truth that is ever before us, as us, is the meaning of the letter AYIN. So on this week of Shabbat Mikeitz, the Sabbath of ending, which is also Shabbat Chanukah and Shabbat Rosh Chodesh, may our inner light ever increase to bring the negative dreams of life to an end, awakening us to the miraculous gift of the true life, just as it is. Amen. So just to also mention part of the symbology of Chanukah and the lighting of the lights in ever-increasing amount, which is representing, of course, the story of the miracle of the light. What is this idea of the miracle of the light? What is that really saying? It's more than just, wow, isn't it amazing? It's such a miracle that the oil lasted longer than it was supposed to. It's like like a miracle of physics. It's that's kind of the storybook idea. The deeper idea, as I see it, is that we put something into it, and what we get out of it is vastly more than we're able to put into it. It's a coming together of effort and grace. Sometimes grace just comes without any effort. That's true. And sometimes we feel that we're putting in effort and we don't feel any grace. That also happens sometimes. But the reminder of Hanukkah is that there is this possibility of being persistent in our effort, and that's the quality of Netzach on the tree of life. The Sphira of Netzach means that you're consistent, you're plugging away. It doesn't mean you have to do a whole lot, but it means you're consistent with what you're doing. If you meditate for even 2 minutes every day, if it's every day, that's the Netzach principles, that you're plugging away at it. Of course, longer you'll get more effect. But ultimately, that consistency tends to birth a fruit. I don't know if birthing a fruit is the right metaphor, but it tends to ripen a fruit that is far more than the effort that we put in. That's the miracle of it. That's the miracle of Hanukkah as I see it, that some of that effort we put in is the light, is the initial light, and the light we get out of it is the 8 lights. 8, of course, it's not just 8. The number 8 represents infinity. So there's no end to what we get, because what we get actually is a connection and a sense of felt oneness with that which has no limit, with the unlimited. These are all just words of describing it. The point is, put in that practice every day. That's the real fruit, not the understanding of the teaching, but the actual doing of the teaching.